Today I will show you a science fiction, horror thriller film from 2007, titled Species, The Awakening. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A beautiful and intelligent college professor is horrified to discover that she's a human alien hybrid. In a race against time, she and her uncle travel to Mexico to find a cure, but procuring it requires a sacrifice she might not be willing to make. Miranda Hollander is a beautiful and intelligent woman teaching at a local university. After class, she meets her uncle, Tom Hollander, at his office in the local museum. He's studying crinoids, ancient marine animals that resemble flowers, and tells Miranda that he can splice its DNA to create a whole new breed of crinoids. Miranda finds his idea unnatural, to which he agrees, but comments that it's interesting nonetheless. Miranda then looks forlorn and tells her uncle that Oxford University has invited her to teach there, but she assures Tom that she's refused the offer since she can't leave him, as he's her only family. Later that night, Tom cooks dinner while Miranda waits for her date. He tells her to take the job at Oxford, and he'll accompany her there. She's ecstatic, and they toast to her new job. Seconds later, her date arrives, and she tells her uncle not to wait up for her. The next day, a jogger finds Miranda's clothless body by the lake, covered in blue veins. Meanwhile, Tom checks Miranda's room and discovers that she didn't come home last night. Miranda is brought to the hospital, where she experiences quick flashes of what happened last night. She whispers her full name to the doctor, and the hospital calls Tom at his office, informing him of her situation. At the hospital, the doctor notices that her lab results are unnatural and that her X-ray scans don't look human, so he tells his colleague to redo them. The technician rescans an unconscious Miranda. Suddenly, the machine malfunctions, and she awakens as an alien being. She ends the man's life by puncturing his chest with a long tentacle-like appendage from her mouth. Tom arrives at the hospital to find that Miranda has disposed of multiple personnel. He comes across a bloody trail of footprints and finds Miranda on the floor. Seeing the blue veins on her body, he injects her with an unknown substance that makes the veins disappear. He then brings her to his car and drives back to their house to pack their belongings, before fleeing town. While driving, Tom tells her they're made a beeline for Mexico. Miranda then, at that point, inquires as to whether she was the person who killed the emergency clinic staff. Tom affirms and makes sense of that she's debilitated with an obscure illness. She's confounded as they ought to see a specialist in the US, all things being equal. He tells her they can't help her and goes the vehicle to the roadside. Tom explains that they must go to Mexico to find his old university colleague Forbes McGuire. He recounts that Forbes was his brilliant former student whom Tom decided to break ties with years ago. He believes Forbes is the only one that can cure Miranda. Miranda follows Tom out of the car and asks him to tell the truth. He's hesitant but discloses that he and Forbes made her in their lab. He never told her so she could have a normal life. Tom further discloses that they used alien DNA and spliced it with human DNA, and Miranda was one of the results. He walked out from their experiments, but didn't want anything to happen to her, so he took her and raised her like a daughter. Miranda doesn't believe him, but Tom presses her. He explains that he fabricated her childhood and told it repeatedly until she believed it. Devastated, Miranda begins to cry, so Tom apologizes and consoles her. Later that night, they arrive in Mexico and spend the night at a motel. Miranda asks Tom why Forbes is in Mexico, and he surmises that he's come there to disappear. She then asks why they split up, and he says he found their project to be immoral. Miranda then notices the blue veins have reappeared, so Tom injects her with human hormones and explains he's been injecting her with it twice or thrice a year while she slept. Tom suppresses her alien biology. Tom doesn't know much about her biology because Forbes was the one who designed her and might be the only person who can help her. She notices the blue veins have receded, but Tom clarifies that the hormones' effects have weakened since the incident at the hospital. The following day, Tom explains that she's a highly functional human-alien hybrid that can absorb so much knowledge, and he's never had to teach her anything. He gives her a book of Shakespeare's works, and Miranda comments that she's read it 100 times. He rebuffs, saying she's never read it. Tom then hands her a car manual, and she begins absorbing the information by merely holding it. They finally arrive at a town called Alquizar and check into a hotel. Tom asks the concierge if he knows where Forbes' location is, but the man shrugs. Meanwhile, a man in a cowboy hat is eavesdropping on their conversation. The next day, Tom prepares syringes with human hormones in case Miranda has another attack. He then leaves her to rest and begins searching for Forbes, and a hybrid dressed as a nun follows him. As Tom enters an alleyway, the nun appears in front of him and starts chasing him across town. He tries escaping through the roof of the building, but the hybrid wraps her tongue around his leg. A police car suddenly arrives, noticing the commotion, so the hybrid stops her attack and walks away. Sometime later, Tom bumps into the man wearing a cowboy hat. The man invites him for a drink, and Tom obliges. In the bar, the man tells Tom that he overheard his conversation last night and tells him how to find Forbes. He instructs Tom to head to the town square at midnight to wait for a taxi cab that will take him to Forbes. Tom follows his instructions and rides the taxi. The taxi then pulls into a warehouse. Confused, Tom explains that he's a friend of Forbes. The taxi driver then turns around and reveals himself to be an alien hybrid. He opens his mouth wide, revealing alien musculature, and attacks Tom. Tom manages to get out of the car and tries to escape. The hybrid chases him into the warehouse, where he pushes a pile of tires onto the hybrid. The hybrid pulls himself out from under the tires and searches for Tom again. Tom gets in the taxi and rams it into another car, pinning the hybrid. Tom then douses it with gasoline and sets it on fire. Later that night, Tom returns to the hotel to confront the cowboy. The man retrieves a handgun from his dresser before opening his door. Tom requests he give him Forbes' area, yet the man focuses his firearm at him. Miranda out of nowhere shows up and advises the man to stop. However, he doesn't tune in and starts provoking her. Miranda then utilizes her outsider solidarity to thump the man to give them Forbes' genuine location. Later, they drive to Forbes' location, and Miranda uses her powers to figure out the code for the door. Inside, they find Forbes McGuire copulating with the hybrid that attacked Tom earlier. Forbes is surprised to see Tom and acts coy about his creations attacking the older man. He recognizes Miranda as Experiment G178, but Tom corrects him with her real name. Forbes then introduces them to Azura, his director of community relations and lover. Tom informs him that Azura was the nun who attacked him, to which Forbes apologizes, explaining that she can't think complex thoughts. He then asks Miranda what she does for a living and is surprised that she holds 2 degrees. While this is happening, the 2 hybrids have a stare down, and after a brief flash of Miranda's true alien form, she collapses and starts convulsing. Tom carries her to a table, where he and Forbes inject her with human hormones to calm her down. As Miranda rests, Tom reprimands Forbes for continuing to experiment with hybrids. Forbes explains that he makes people happy by bringing back their late loved ones. Tom asserts that it's not the same, as they're spliced with alien DNA. Forbes argues that his experiments are safe because he's worked out the remaining kinks. Tom then counters that the cab driver tried to kill him, but Forbes tells him that the driver was an anomaly. He then discloses that he's made failed hybrids, but their instability causes them to perish within a month or 2. Tom asks Forbes what's happening to Miranda. Forbes explains that she's reached the end of her lifespan, but Tom is incredulous since Miranda's still young. Forbes asserts his findings and tells him she'll only have until tomorrow. Sometime later, Forbes suggests he'll make Tom another hybrid once Miranda dies, further upsetting Tom. Forbes advises him to inform Miranda of her impending death. Tom asks what Forbes will do if Azura dies, and he casually replies that he'll simply make another one. Azura overhears their conversation and becomes resentful of Forbes' statements about her. Miranda finally wakes, and Tom regretfully informs her that Forbes can't help her. Forbes sees them and walks away sadly. Miranda then asks Tom if she can see the local church nearby. In the church, Miranda contemplates whether she has a soul. Tom then tells her they'll do whatever she wants, and she says she wants to go back home to face the charges for the hospital incident. Forbes appears and tells them to come back to the warehouse. Forbes informs them of another way to extend Miranda's life. However, to harvest human DNA, they'll need a live donor. Miranda refuses, but Forbes points out that it's the only way. Still, Miranda stands by her decision to not take a life. At the hotel, Tom tells her they'll try to find another way, but Miranda has already accepted her fate. She's lived a good life and suggests that he should help Forbes become a better man. He then tells her that she's his actual scientific work, which upsets her. She goes to the bathroom to compose herself, but notices the blue veins have reappeared. She convulses and then collapses to the floor. Tom brings her back to Forbes' warehouse, and they inject her with hormones. She stabilizes, but Forbes informs Tom they'll have to do the procedure soon, or she'll die. He instructs Tom to find a donor, and Tom is horrified by what he's being asked to do. Forbes insists because Miranda only has hours to live, leaving Tom with no choice. Tom drives through town to look for someone to abduct. He finds an unsuspecting woman and follows her, but Tom can't go through with it, and lets the woman escape. He then walks around and finds a woman flirtily looking at him. He follows her to a bar, where she invites him to dance. Minutes later, she leads him to the alley behind the bar, where they make out. He recommends they go some spot else, however the lady demands she believes that should carry out the thing there. She drives him to another room, where she takes out a weapon and mugs him. As she's going to shoot Tom, Azura shows up and takes the lady out. They bring her back to the warehouse and strap her to a table beside Miranda's. She wakes up and begs them to let her go, so Azura injects her with a stabilizer. Later on, Miranda and the woman are respectively encased in alien sex. They begin the procedure, and the 2 women start to convulse violently, making Tom panic and order Forbes to stop. Forbes says he can't stop the process as it's about to finish, then the 2 women stop convulsing. Seconds later, Miranda crawls out from the alien sack and appears confused. The men rush in to help her, but she throws Forbes into the glass window. Tom calms her down, and she accepts his help. Afterward, Miranda awakes and Tom joyfully informs her that she's okay. He gives her a Latin book called Orpheus Metamorphosis. She takes it, but realizes that the book is about people changing into other creatures. Angry, she tosses the book aside. She gets out of bed and tells the men that she wants to make love to Azura, shocking everyone with her sudden change in behavior. To cut the tension, Forbes pulls Azura away into another room. Miranda continues to act odd, and Tom tells her that they should go back to the hotel so she can rest. Miranda starts flirting with him, implying that they do the deed. Tom is shocked and denies her advances, which she doesn't warmly embrace, inciting her to leave. Afterward, Tom glances through a magnifying instrument to really look at Miranda's red platelets. He blames Forbes for mistakenly carrying out the methodology and figures they ought to infuse Miranda with additional human chemicals to balance out her. Forbes gives him a needle loaded up with hydrochloric corrosive to dial Miranda back, and a shotgun on the off chance that things turn out badly. Tom is livid that Forbes suggests he shoot Miranda and admonishes him for always being so careless. Forbes argues that Miranda's alien side has become dominant and is looking to reproduce. Tom assures that Miranda is sterile, but Forbes believes that she might have regained fertility due to the new human DNA they injected. Forbes tells him they must work together to stop her, but the frustrated Tom leaves to find Miranda alone. Miranda heads to the hotel and seduces the concierge. She's known he was a hybrid since they arrived, and the two stare at each other. While they regard one another, Miranda realizes he's sterile, so she uses her alien tongue to pierce the concierge, ending his life. Meanwhile, Tom goes to the church to search for Miranda. A priest greets him but is killed by Azura. She claims that Tom and Miranda's arrival ruined everything. As she's about to pierce Tom, he blocks her attack with a Bible. She throws him across the room, and Tom tells her she doesn't need to hurt him. As she menacingly approaches, he throws a chalice at the rope suspending a giant cross. The rope unfurls and the cross falls onto Azura, crushing her. Meanwhile, Miranda arrives at a bar. She spots a woman singing on stage and follows her to the dressing room. She intimidates the woman to give her the red dress she's wearing. The woman initially refuses, so Miranda shows her alien side, and the scared woman obliges. Miranda, now wearing the red dress, returns to the dance floor and searches for potential mates. She pierces a man's head, causing a commotion. Forbes arrives and asks a person where the monster went. Before driving after Miranda, Forbes finds Miranda and follows her into an abandoned warehouse. She corners Forbes and undresses in front of him. Miranda's always known that he's wanted her since the moment they met. Forbes tries to sedate her, but she stops him, making him drop the syringe. Miranda then takes his clothes off and forces herself onto him. When she feels Forbes' seed inside her, she transforms into her alien form and impales him with her tongue. Meanwhile, Azura heals herself and regains consciousness. Later, Tom arrives at the warehouse and finds Forbes' body. He spots a dress and begins to search for Miranda. Tom later finds her unconscious and spots movement in her stomach. He hesitantly reaches out to touch it, but the thing tries to bite him. Tom brings her back to the lab and performs an ultrasound, and discovers an alien hybrid developing rapidly inside her womb. Miranda wakes and starts getting contractions. She begs Tom to end her suffering, as she feels her humanity slipping away. The lights go off, and Tom arms himself with a shotgun. He searches the warehouse and finds Azura in her alien form. She attacks him, and Tom tries to fend for himself with the gun. She disappears, and he wanders into an abandoned portion of the warehouse. Azura strangles him, then throws him across the room. As she's about to finish him, Miranda stops her. Miranda launches sharp projectiles, which pierce Azura. The aliens continue their battle until Miranda knocks Azura onto a wall, incapacitating her. When Miranda approaches Tom, Azura comes from behind and stabs her. As she lies biting the dust, she changes once again into her human structure. Azura is going to strike the last blow when Tom out of nowhere shoots her. She falls 3 stories down and perishes. Tom checks if Azura has really died before returning to Miranda. With her dying breath, she thanks him for giving her life. Tom proceeds to open all the gas tanks and burners in the warehouse. As he walks away, the building explodes, destroying any trace of the experiments.